Hey there, it's Olivia-Savannah here from Olivia's Catastrophe. So this reading vlog is dedicated to my best friend Yana. Happy birthday, Yana. It's Yana's birthday of the date of me posting this, and one of the authors that Yana has really been enjoying in the past year has been TJ Klune. She has read many of his books, many more than I have, even though I was the one who recommended The House in the Cerulean Sea to her. So this vlog is dedicated to me catching up as much as possible. It's currently halfway through January and she's here at the end of January. I'm literally counting down the days because I'm so excited. So it gives me about 15 days to read as much TJ Klune as I possibly can cram into my brain. And I've decided I'm not going to make it easy for myself because I have started with Wolfsong by TJ Klune, which is arguably his biggest book. It's the first book in a fantasy series that he indie published, which is about werewolves, and that's all I really know, and it's been republished and traditionally published with these gorgeous covers, and I've heard such good things about it. But as you can tell from my bookmark, I've already started and I've read the first 100 pages, so I'm here to give you a little bit of an update. So from what I can gather from the first 100 pages is we're following Ox, and Ox is a young boy who's a teenager and his dad leaves. He just leaves, walks out the door and leaves him and his mum in a lot of debt and struggling with money. And then also these people move in down the street and they become fast friends with him, like the whole family kind of envelop him, and they have these very strange mannerisms that seem to be entirely quite close and, you know what, almost pack-like. And that's where I am in the story, more or less. I'm going to try and keep these vlogs spoiler free, and I just want you to know that I've read the first 100 pages and I love this book. I love it already. I know that Yana really liked this one as well, but I love it. I'm a vampire girly through and through, but I used to be more into werewolves, and I haven't read a very good werewolf story in a very long time. I find the alpha thing kind of tends to fall into romance a bit too much, but this is bringing back the pack vibes, the found family that's behind a werewolf story, and found family is my all-time favorite trope. I do love the pack, don't get me wrong. I love the found family. I think Ox is a very nice character, even though I'm supposed to be falling for the pack and the found family, which I am. I love them, I adore them, they are great. The character that I would do anything for is Gordo. And Gordo is kind of the stand-in dad slash brother slash best friend for Ox once his father leaves. He's not of the pack. He has a history with the people who used to be in the pack, and you get to learn more about him. He's not the main character, he's not the love interest, he's like the dad equivalent character, and I would do anything for him because he's so sweet and he's so genuine, and you can tell that he loves Ox a lot and protects him a lot, and any snippets that we can get of Gordo's backstory or Gordo's character, I'm here for it. Gordo is like Boyd in the Raven cycle if Boyd actually took the time to step up and pay attention and actually be active and be brave enough to be active for Adam Parrish. So maybe it's just fulfilling the Raven cycle hole in that story that I didn't know that I needed. I'm falling far too much into fangirl to be quite accurate with my thoughts here, but I'm just having a very good time. I'm vibing, I like the characters. I'm curious to see where things are going to go with the werewolf story and the magic system that they've started to build from where I am in the book. It's a very big book, there's a lot of time, there's a lot of space, but right now it's mostly focused on the characters and introducing us to this world. While we do have the found family of the pack, I should also mention that there is kind of the found family of boys who work in the garage, and while they are again side characters, even more side characters than Gordo, I love all of them, like Tanner, Rico. I love them all and I think they are all great. I just want everyone in this book to stay safe, and I wish them the world and all the happiness. Very happy reading this. But before I check in for the next 100 pages that I'm going to read, I want to take you back to a time when I went to a Black to the Future event. This is an event that I went to with my sister. We went and it was for Ajoa Ando, who was talking to one of the editors from Hodder Escape, and she is best known as Lady Danbury from Bridgerton, but also really well known as Martha's mum in Doctor Who, and I absolutely love Doctor Who, so I was definitely fangirling when I got to see her. So I'm going to take you back to that event. It was very, very cozy in a really nice, lovely building in King's Cross, and if you haven't heard of Black to the Future, you really should. You should check out their Instagram, which I'll link down below, and also the website, because they have been doing such a good job of really making amazing like Afrofuturistic black sci-fi and black fantasy focused events here in London, some of which are online, some of which are in person, but I think they are so great. And if you haven't been checking them out, you really should, because the more that we support them and go to these events, the more that they will do in future, and I'm here for it. I'm so here for it. So yes, I hope you enjoy going to that event with me. Okay, I've got to make this quick because I've got to go to work, but inevitably as I go into the office I'm going to read this book on the tube, so I needed to do this update now because I've read so much and I have so many thoughts and I have not updated you on the book. So first of all, the event with Adjoa Ando was absolutely amazing. She is so cool. I loved getting to hear way more about her because she has been in theatre and the arts for years, and she's done so much beyond like Lady Danbury and Doctor Who, and I got to learn all about that, which was fascinating. But also getting to hear from the editor from Hoterscape was really interesting for someone who's pursuing writing, who's interested in SFF, to see what trends are coming up, what people are interested in reading, and how you talk about those books when there haven't been as many books that are able to be compared to what books are coming out now. So that was all fascinating. But let's talk about Wolfsong, because I am halfway through and I can't stop reading. I absolutely love this book. Yana just knows how to pick them. I head over heels adore it. But I don't think it's without flaws. I don't think it's without flaws. First of all, I do want to talk about the romance in this one, because the romance is a big deal and it means a lot to the story. Ultimately though, the found family is the top trope that you're going to get from this, and I love the found family. I actually think it's more than one found family in this. There's two found families, and the secondary one is the one that I'm most interested in and I love the most, mostly because it relates to Gordo, and Gordo is my favourite character by far. And when I started this book, I was really worried that all of the secondary characters were going to be killed off and that all of the secondary characters are going to be just secondary characters in the background, and I love the secondary characters more than the main characters, so I was really anticipating how this book was going to go in terms of how much we see from each character, but it blew my mind. It didn't give me that. All of the secondary characters are almost treated as if they are main characters, and I absolutely love that for me because one of the secondary characters is my favourite, and I just like how no one seems to be forgotten, no one seems to be left behind, which is very much in the spirit of found family. But I also want to talk about the romance, because there is one romance that in particular that is the main romance, and I do think there's some other romances happening in the background, but what I particularly like about this one is that it feels really sweet and it feels really genuine. And I will say at points it becomes too sweet, like it becomes a little bit sickly sweet, it becomes a little bit overly cheesy, but you give that book the grace because it's basically how TJ Klune likes to write, right? He likes to write things that are a little bit too wholesome, a little bit too romantic, a little bit too genuine, and kind of almost like giving you good vibes in a way that you feel like you're being injected good vibes, but you kind of need it, so you soak it up anyway. And that's what I do like about the romance, that even so sometimes the like speech, like the love declaration or the speech that they give is a bit over the top, it's still kind of cute. Okay, we have a scented candle. Now the cut may have been abrupt, and that is because of the fact that my camera space was full. It was full. I didn't know that. I didn't have time to move things over before I went to work. So now we're doing it now. Time has passed. You can see because my hair is different. I was undoing my hair today, so natural hair right now, but my hairdresser should be here soon to do my hair in a different colour. But that's not what we're here to talk about. We're here to talk about Wolfsong. What I was trying to talk to you about at the time that it cut out was the age thing. So the love interest, there's a bit of an age gap between love interests, and I've read multiple romance books with love interests who have an age gap before, and it doesn't really faze me, but I've realised that that's because all of those ones where I've read an age gap have been adult, where they are both adults at the time of the age gap, and even if they meet and one of them is an adult and the other one is not, there's no case of grooming. There's no case of them being nearby each other for the time or even interacting with each other. Like maybe they'll meet when one's underage and one's older, and they have one interaction and they realize the age difference, and then the older person buggers off, as they should do, and then maybe they meet several years later and like rekindle something. With one of them being underage and like the process of waiting for things to be okay, I don't really like that, and that makes me feel a bit icky, and that is in this book. So I didn't realize that that was going to make me uncomfortable until I read it, and now I know. But it's just a situation, and it's forgivable, because what happens if you are both teenagers when things start up? I don't know if that's the case here really. Things to think about. But if you're both teenagers and then like one of you becomes an adult and then the other one becomes an adult, I don't think I'd have an issue. It's just because there is still a significant gap, like enough of a gap for me to be like, I'm not sure. So the plot has kicked off. The plot has started since I last talked to you, and it took 200 pages for the plot to kick in. This is a 600-ish page book, so it's a third of the way through a big book for the plot to kick in. Now, in most cases this would bother me, but I was fully invested in the characters, in the setup of what it means to be a werewolf and such for so long that I did not care. I did not mind that it took this long for the plot to come in. If the book had been 600 pages of not fluff per se, but characters just being characters and the found family, I still would have read the whole book. So that is the level of character work that I am on, that I absolutely adore. We have to give a moment to talk about Gordo, but I actually can't say that much because I don't want to give any spoilers. But Gordo Livingstone is on his way to becoming one of my all-time favorite characters. Like, he is just building and building and building in my mind, and everything he does, every word, every choice, every action, it's solidifying him in my mind. And I just have a thing for mechanics. Like, lots of my favorite characters are mechanics. That's okay. Bodyguards and mechanics, I just have a little thing, and he fits into the mechanics box, but he also is just so caring and loving towards Ox, and it's lovely to see. But I will say, in this book, there's more than one type of creature. There's werewolves. I believe that we're going to be introduced to more creatures. They keep talking about how there's loads of different things out there, and I want to know what these different things are, and I hope in this series like more and more of them come in. But one of the things that we also learn is out there is witches, but there's so little time given to developing what a witch is, what a witch can do, what their powers are, what their limits are. Whereas for werewolves, we are constantly being fed new information about like what a werewolf does, all of these bits about werewolves, and I love it. This is a werewolf story, it makes sense that that's the priority here, but I want more information on the witches. What I equally like about this book is that it's lightly funny. It has a sense of humor, and I like that sense of humor. I like that it pops up in little different places. Sometimes the characters are awkward, and in that awkwardness there's humor created, a bit of cringe humor. I just think it's funny that this book can be, I like that this book can be wholesome and wholehearted, and sometimes have action scenes and sometimes have angst, but it doesn't forget to like make me smile or make me laugh at points as well. And sometimes I'm reading and giggling because the banter is funny and enjoyable and nice, and I'm like, I'm on the tube, I can't giggle right now. I've talked about how this book is a bit too sweet for me sometimes, but it also has its good themes. It touches on making the right choices in life, what it means to be a man, what it means to love in all the forms, not just like romantic partners, but like family love, friendship love, trust, loyalty, a lot of things about accepting yourself and accepting your imperfections and who you are, being yourself. There's a lot of touching on those things, and it's really sweet, it's really cute, and some of the messages are really nice and genuine. Sometimes I've been highlighting quotes because I'm like, oh, that actually sounds really nice all wrapped up and put together. I really like the setting. I think if you're going to have a found family story, you should always have one key setting. I love books that have a key setting that feels as much a part of the story or as relevant to the story as the characters are and the plot. You see this in the Raven cycle with Cabe's Water, it becomes really important, and I just have loads of merch with Cabe's Water on it. Or if you've got a dark academia thing, which is set at a certain university, like Doctor Who with Gallifrey, you just have a place of setting that's really relevant to the story. And in this, it's Green Creek. The whole book is set in Green Creek, so far at least, and it's like a small town, and there's a forest, and in the forest there's old magic, and you know, Raven cycle's my jam. I love like an old forest with magic and like sad boys. But there are also some things that I don't particularly like that are happening, and these are just small minor things. I would still definitely rate this book 4 stars or above, and it's going to have to do something drastic for it to be less than 4 stars, but there are some things I don't like. And one of them is the monster mentality. Now this is a trope that a lot of books fall into when it comes to monsters or like supernatural creatures, and that's when you know you're a supernatural creature and you're interacting with someone who isn't, and you love to paint yourself as the monster. Edward Cullen is a prime example of this, trying to scare Bella away because he is a monster. And in this one, the wolves are not isolated from that. Sometimes they paint themselves as like, I'm a monster, you shouldn't be near me, I'm a monster, I'm dangerous for you. And I'm just like, get over yourself. It's tired, it's really done. And I think with the age that some of these characters are, because this whole book starts when they're children, it doesn't work. It just doesn't work. Flashbacks and action scenes. I've talked about this extensively when I was reading another series that I think is really bad but is very, very popular, and we don't want to talk about that series anymore, back on my channel many years ago. But a sign for me of bad writing in an action scene is when the suspense is at its height and all of the action is happening and you get to a very key moment, and what do you do then? You drop us into a flashback. No, no, no! When it comes to action scenes, keep us in the action, keep us in the moment. You can't build our suspense and then just take it away. It doesn't work that way. The suspense doesn't carry through the flashback. If there's information we need to know before we get into the action scene, give it to us beforehand, or if it's not relevant, give it to us afterwards. Don't put it in the middle of the action. I was impressed that this was putting action into it. I thought it was going to be a much softer story than that, but no, they're werewolves, they're going to fight things, and so I'm glad that we get to see it. I just wish we stayed in it the whole time. So now what's going to happen is I've been invited to a preview screening of The Colour Purple, and I'm really looking forward to seeing this film. I read The Colour Purple several years ago now. It was a gift to me from a friend that me and Yana both have in common, and I read it and I really loved it, and I think it's fantastic, and before its time. So first of all, I want to talk about the film, The Colour Purple, which was fantastic. I really loved it, and I urge you all to go and see it. I love the book, and it's such a fantastic take on the book. I did not expect it to be a musical. That took me by surprise. Everyone who's in that film can sing up a storm, and it was fantastic that every single song hit. And it's such an emotional book and story, and yet I think the musical element to it did kind of balance that, and it didn't lean too heavily in the darkness. And there are some changes from the story, but it just works so well, and I had such a good time. I've added half the songs to my playlist, and it made me feel euphoria, and it made me feel sad and emotional, and it did all of the drives that I wanted it to. It was a bit of a slow start, but it got there, and it stole my heart. And the last thing I need to say, which is courtesy of Hannah from Ladette M, I went to see Ostinacious with my sister Simi. So Ostinacious is a improvised play. It's entirely improvised, and they improvise a play in the theme and style of Jane Austen. So every single night that you go, you're never going to see the same play because everything is improvised. And so the title that was chosen out from the audience this time was called Gentlemen Prefer Bonnets, and it was fantastic. It was funny. I laughed out loud so many times, like genuinely belly laughed out loud so many times. It was in the style of Jane Austen. It was weird, wacky, it had queer tones to it, and it was really lovely. It was so much fun, and I would absolutely go again because it was just nothing like I expected. So Wolfsong, I finished it. I decided to give this book 5 stars, and it became a new favorite. Now this book is such a good first one in a series, and it's not without its flaws. There are times when I think, oh my gosh, the italics, it was too many italics. You don't need that many italics. And it also slowed down in the middle there. I can't say what it does because that would be a spoiler, but it does something I'm not a big fan of when it comes to romance, because I think it eradicates why you're there when you're reading a romance. And it's strange because one of my favorite romantic series ever has this in large in the book, and I love it, but here it took me some time to drag myself through those 3 chapters in particular. So if you read the book, you know exactly what 3 chapters I'm talking about, but otherwise fantastic, 5 stars. I know I've talked about how much I love Gordo Livingstone, but I literally cannot stress to you how much I love Gordo Livingstone. The next book in the series, I can show it to you here. without the dust jacket on is called Ravensong, and while I was reading this one, I used my brain cells and I figured out who the next book was about. The found family vibes in this are 10 out of 10 fantastic. I cannot get over how full of found family it is. If you are a fan of the found family trope, you need this book. You need this book in your life. I was told that this book had steamy scenes in it, and if you want to know, it does. It does have a few. This is the steam level of the love hypothesis, and it has about the same number of steamy scenes as the love hypothesis as well. I do think the steamy scene here though is better. It was really good. I was very surprised because of the language that they used about like being turned on or arousal in the book. Made me think, oh, they're gonna really try and like dodge around the language and like dodge around the steamy scene, but no, it did that and it did it very well. I'm a fan. The ending to this book was perfect. I really liked the ending. I really liked what happened to the ending. It had suspense. It kept me reading. I was reading this book up until 1:30 a.m. at night because I couldn't stop reading. And I also really liked the epilogue. I feel like so many epilogues end one of two ways, but this one didn't. It was refreshing in some ways, and I really liked the epilogue. What more can I read that I know that Yana loves, and also that I think I'm gonna love? And I thought she'd only read this one book, but I decided to quiz her on this using some leverage that I have, and I discovered that she's also read Ravensong. So that just meant I could continue on and read Ravensong, and I have. I'm 128 pages into Ravensong. Now, giving you an update is going to be extra hard because I cannot tell you even who this book is about, because that would be considered a spoiler. So what I will tell you is that it kind of picks up right from, not right where the other one ends, but this book kind of goes back into the past from before what happens in Wolfsong, while also overlapping with Wolfsong, while also predictably, I'm assuming, going to move into the future that happens after Wolfsong. And I just want to say, as usual, I'm loving everything about Gordo in this. Any moment that he's mentioned, I'm happy and I'm enjoying it, and I'm reading and having such a great time. I do think the love interest for this book, again, not saying who it is, feels a bit 2D. He doesn't feel fully fleshed out to me yet, and I would very much like if he felt more fleshed out to me, because when they're the love interest in a romance book, they need more personality. We need more moments with them. And I get that this book is full of angst, and I get that that angst is kind of really one-sided, so it's hard to communicate how they fit together as a couple, but I do think it needs to work a little bit harder on that. But in terms of like the characterization and who we're following, I'm liking that. I think our main character is doing a very good job of being a main character. And it's strange going from Wolfsong directly onto this, because I can see where the writing style is very similar, and I can see where the main character here says something that sounds a bit like it's in Ox's voice but doesn't quite fit. Like, it shouldn't, this voice shouldn't sound like Ox's, but it kind of does, and that annoys me a little bit because I'm just like, oh, the voices need to be a bit more distinct, especially due to the difference in age. This book spans quite a few years, so it makes sense that there's a difference in age. But I'm loving it. I am loving it. I have become werewolf trash very quickly, and I still feel like in the first book I wanted to know more about the witches and how the witches worked, and I wanted to know if there were more beings in the world outside of werewolves, and we have been introduced to one more group, but really I just want to know if vampires exist in this world, and I don't think they do, and that's really sad. But maybe they do and I just haven't read far enough. I'm going to keep reading Ravensong. What's going to happen next is I'm going to take you with me to a lovely tea house in Amsterdam, and I'm going there with my older sister April, and we are both just having a tea ceremony experience. And Yana too, my bestie, loves tea because she has impeccable taste, as we can see from Wolfsong getting a 5-star. And with that impeccable taste, I know she'd be fully supportive of me going to a tea house in this vlog. it's time for another update on this vlog. I have read more of Ravensong and I am here to tell you about it. I've got 2 chapters left. I have been a reading machine because I love this book, and I'm here to tell you about like the good and the bad and the ugly, because even though I continue to love these books, I continue to not think they are not flawed. So with this book, I think the plot has actually really ramped up, and the plot in this is a big improvement and step up from Wolfsong, because there's just so much more plot going on, and the first 200 pages was a lot of like overlap and recap with what happened in the first book, but then you get further in and it's like, wow, this plot is kicking off, and it's almost as if it's a fantasy book with plot that balances with the romance, and I was here for it. I was here for the plot. It was unexpected. I really think when I was reading Wolfsong, I thought, okay, I know who the villain is going to be of the next book, and I thought it was going to be a really like, I can see where this is going, but no, there's a lot more to this, and the villain of this book is not the villain that I expected, and I'm here for that because it felt very refreshing, it felt very different, and I like when I can't predict everything about a book. And I think if you're going to have a romance heavy or a character driven heavy book, it can be very easy for it to err into the predictable, but this did not do that. I love seeing someone who's so angsty and working through so many emotions, but he's actually so old. The angst is real. There is so much angst, and actually as I was reading this book I was thinking, why have I never read a book where it's a female werewolf pack? Like all of the wolf books I've ever read, while there may be 1 or 2 women in the pack, it's literally male dominated, and I still haven't. I still think most of the packs that I've read are male dominated, and this book is no exclusion to that fact, but it's just like put in my brain that I need to find a werewolf book where the pack is like mostly women and you've got 1 or 2 token men. The slow burn is slow burning, like very slow burning, and it was lovely to see that slow burn. I've read past the point where the slow burn like capitulates, and again I just have to say the steamy scene took me by surprise. And then the last thing was a bit cringe, and that is there's a character in this who's a very side character, like literally doesn't get much page time, literally probably has 1 page all to themselves, and this character speaks in patois. It is so cringely written patois. I don't want to say that white authors can't write patois, but like it was not good. But it was almost like the character would lose the patois in syllables and places in which I know that there should be patois intonation. So you saw us go to the tea house, which was really nice, and we had a great time there. I learned a lot about tea, a lot of facts that I didn't know, and I got Yana this tea advent calendar for Christmas one time, so she will be all for me. Ooh, I just hit myself in the face with it. Choosing the next tea, which I can see is right there. We need number 4. We need number 4. Oh, this is the Earl Grey tea. Earl Grey tea, grey with attitude. Nice, sounds good. I often find Earl Grey like basic. I think I mentioned that. It's like one of the most basic teas, but it used to be my favorite tea. Back in the day, it was the first tea that I switched to that wasn't the standard builder's tea, and that's why I loved it so much, but now it takes a lot for an Earl Grey to impress me. And then I'm going to start reading the last book of this vlog. So one of the books that Yana really loves is Heartstopper. She loves the TV series, she loves the books, and she recently read Heartstopper Volume 5. So I've got Patreon reading sprints for the Catastrophe readathon. You can join my Patreon, link down below. Yana absolutely supports my Patreon, because as soon as I let her know that I opened one, she was like, oh, let me see the link, and then she signed up to my highest tier because she is the best friend like that. So yes, you should check out my Patreon because Yana agrees that you should, but also I will be reading Heartstopper Volume 5 because that is one of her favourite books, and I think that's going to be the last book of this vlog. Okay, hello, we're just going to do a little quick update. I'm just about to go to sleep. I went and saw Poor Things in the cinema with my sister, and me and her both really liked it. I have loved Emma Stone for a very long time. I've seen quite a few of her films, and I think she did a fantastic, like a phenomenal job acting in this role. And it was one of those like really weird, strange films, but it was definitely Frankenstein inspired, and it was definitely one that made me think a lot, and I really liked it. I'm not going to give a Poor Things review. I don't think that would be a Yana approved film. I don't think it's one for her, as in I wouldn't recommend it to her. I think maybe she'd watch it, but I don't know what she would think of it. But more importantly, I'm here to mention the fact that during those Patreon sprints I did finish reading The Chunky Boy, that is Ravensong, and it was good. It's gonna be another 5 stars, another new favourite. So again, Bestie has impeccable taste. What I will say about this one is that It's called Ravensong, which means that something to do with ravens is obviously in this, and in the beginning it quotes the Edgar Allan Poe poem The Raven, and it was really trying to push that Nevermore narrative or like theme in this, and I don't necessarily think that it fit. Against my better judgment, this really got to me because I think a lot of the things he learns are things I've either learned or still need to learn, so that was nice. I also think this epilogue was not as good as the epilogue to Wolfsong. That's for a particular reason. If you've read both books, you'll know why I prefer the epilogue to Wolfsong, because you don't get what you get in that epilogue in this epilogue, and I wanted some of that in this one. But we didn't get it. What we did get though was really sweet and cute. It made me laugh out loud while I was reading, so that's a good way to end the book. And it was also like really genuine and really lovely and a nice epilogue. And then after the epilogue there was another scene, and that scene just dropped a plot twist on us. It just dropped a bombshell, like, here you go, you've got to wait for the sequel to learn more. So in Heartsong we'll definitely be hearing more about that, and that was interesting, and it makes me want to read Heartsong right now. The good thing is, or the bad thing as well, is that I don't have Heartsong, so you're not just going to get me reading the Green Creek series vlog, because I literally would continue if I had it. It comes out February 1st, which will have come out by the time that this video is up. It's also a self-published series, so you could just go and get all of them right now. But I'm gonna wait and get my copy the like traditional way, so I can get another hardcover to match this. And at some point I'm gonna have to get a hardcover of Wolfsong. But continuing on, I started the last book for this vlog, which I don't know I'm going to finish before this vlog has to end, because Yana will be here and there's no way in this small flat I could secretly film clips of me talking about these books. So we'll see how far I get tomorrow when I have to close out this vlog. But I've started reading Heartstopper volume 5. But what Yana does is I say, you should read this book. You should I told her, you should read The Love Hypothesis. She's now read multiple books by Ali Hazelwood. I've only read The Love Hypothesis still. I said, you might love The House in the Cerulean Sea, and she did, and she's read like all these TJ Klune books. And I'm still here, having only read the first one and now these two too. So what Yana does really well is that if she likes the book, like I gave her an Alexis Hall, she's now read Alexis Hall books I haven't yet, she just like runs with it and reads a lot of their backlist. And I need to get better at remembering, I love this author, I should just go and check out, or I love this one book by an author, I should go and check out more of their books, because clearly when I do that, like with TJ Klune, I have a good time. Hello, so I'm here to try the Earl Grey tea that I finally made. Now you may recognise that this is not my usual make a big cup of mug. That's because I'm retiring that as my mug that I use the most. I'm moving on to this lovely owl and woodpecker mug that my bestie got me last year. It's finally here in the Netherlands with me and I'm excited. I really like it. I love owls and I just feel like it represents me more closely, so this is the mug that we'll be trying teas with in future. But let me try this Earl Grey quickly before I take the tea bag out, because Earl Grey is the one tea where I don't leave the tea bag in, because if Earl Grey gets too strong I don't tend to like it. Okay, this just tastes like a bog standard Earl Grey. I don't think I just don't think there's much variation that you can do with Earl Grey. It's really nice, it's a good Earl Grey. I don't feel like I need to add sugar or milk to it to make it better, but it's definitely just an Earl Grey tea, and that is okay. It is time for me to bring this vlog to a close, and that is because Yana is on her way here as we speak. So I need to wrap this up so I can sneak and edit it while she's here and then upload it and post it for her birthday. Pray for me that I can get those subtitles done and everything arranged. But I did start reading Heartstopper volume 5, not volume 3, volume 5, and I am halfway through. And when I started reading this again, it was just so sweet and lovely to fall back into these characters and into their relationship and everything that's been happening with them. And I like that as Oseman often starts these books with something sweet and lovely before she kind of delves into, now this is what this book is going to be about in particular. In this one, their relationship is moving on to new heights and they're trying to navigate that and talk about that and face all of the cringy but also lovely stuff that comes with that. There's quite a lot of involvement of the parents in this one because the parents are giving some pushback on certain elements of things that they're trying or deciding to do. It's also about Nick's impending uni choice that's coming up, what that could mean for their relationship and whether he can figure out what he wants to do. And so it's just a lovely reiteration of a lot of the things that this series has continued to talk about throughout the whole course of it, but also things that teenagers really face and discuss and have to think about. It also touches on mental health. This storyline of mental health and mental illness has been threaded through in the previous volume quite a bit, and she doesn't just ditch it and move on to talk about the subject matter in this, but continues to tie it in and make it all like one conclusive narrative, which I really like. I suspect that I'll finish half of this, the other half of this quite quickly. However, there's going to be a couple of days where Yana is here, but she doesn't know that I've started reading it, so I can't continue reading it ASAP. But I will, and I'm looking forward to finishing it. And it's probably going to be either a 4 or 5 stars. It's quite hard to tell as of now, but basically in conclusion for this vlog, my bestie has brilliant reading taste and I should listen to her recommendations even more than I already do. That's it. Please let me know in the comment section down below, does your best friend read books, and if they do, what do they like to read? Do you have any crossover? Give this video a thumbs up if you enjoyed it, hit the subscribe button if you want to see more, and don't forget to hit that notification bell to be updated every time I have a new video. And you know what they say, onwards and upwards. Excelsior! Happy birthday, Yana!